2012. Communist Party of China is looking at a serious pattern, where its most sensitive information of PLA war strategy, nuclear warhead deployments, and top-level party briefings are leaking and ending up in Washington. The party knows there is a leak. It cannot afford to ignore. So they bring in the MSS. After months of searching, MSS finds the mole, takes him and his pregnant wife into the courtyard of the government building, and executes both of them. Still, the leaks don't stop, because there was never just one mole. 6,000 miles away in CIA headquarters, a CIA case officer opens a file and draws a line through a name. 3 weeks later, he draws another line, then another. Within 2 years, 30 people connected to the CIA inside China had disappeared. The CIA had lost every single source it had spent years building. Starting over meant finding a completely new way in. It is the sole reason why, today, the world's most secretive intelligence agency has a YouTube channel with 131,000 subscribers. It is 2010. America is bouncing back from the worst economic crash since the Great Depression. Its GDP had grown over 2.9%. Manufacturing is up by 17%. The country that looked like it was falling apart is standing tall again. And while the economy was rebuilding, one part of America had never stopped growing. After the September 11th attacks, the US intelligence budget more than doubled, hitting a record $80.1 billion. At its peak, the CIA had so many sources around the world that analysts joked, if 3 people are having a private conversation somewhere, one of them is reporting back to CIA. But China was a different story. China ran its own internet, where Google, Facebook, and most foreign websites simply didn't exist. The government decided what its people could read, watch, and say online. Any interaction between a Chinese official and a foreign national was immediately treated as suspicious by the state. But over years of slow, careful work, CIA had placed 30 different sources inside some of the most sensitive parts of the Chinese government. By 2010, the intelligence flowing out of Beijing was giving Washington a clear picture of China's next move. Then one morning, a routine call scheduled to happen with a source didn't connect. The handler waited and tried again the next day. No response. Few weeks later, then a second CIA source didn't pick up the call. Nothing about it looked suspicious at first, but by the time the CIA would realize what was happening in China, it was already too late. One by one, without any warning, CIA sources started disappearing. By 2012, it was over. 30 CIA sources inside China had been identified, hunted down, and executed by the MSS. The intelligence coming out of Beijing went completely silent. And the question that nobody at Langley could answer was, these were trained people who knew how to hide and operate without getting detected for years. So how was China so accurate in finding every single one of them? To understand how China found them, you have to understand what China had been building for decades. China installed over 500 million surveillance cameras across the country, one for every 3 people. Each one connected to a central system capable of identifying a face in a crowd under 3 seconds. But the cameras were just the beginning. Every phone was quietly reporting its location. Every payment made through WeChat or Alipay was logged, stored, and timestamped. Every time someone boarded a train, passed a checkpoint, or checked into a hotel, their ID was scanned and added to a file. Then, China took everything it had collected, from facial recognition to phone location to payment history, and connected it all into one central system, forming a digital life of person. Now, the system wasn't just tracking people, it was predicting their habits. Where would they go, who they would meet, and what they eat. CIA's own chief technology officer, Nand Mulchandani, later gave this a name: digital dust. Every person moving through China leaves an invisible trail behind them that never disappears. A CIA agent arriving in China under a fake name needed more than a fake passport. Their entire digital life had to match their cover story, and if anything didn't line up, the system would flag them within hours. But the CIA's 30 sources weren't foreign officers walking into China. They were Chinese, already inside the system, invisible to it. The surveillance wall couldn't have found them. Their entire digital life was real. So the surveillance wall isn't the full answer. Something else gave them away. The first part of the answer started with one man, Jerry Chun-Shing Lee. Lee had spent 13 years as a CIA field officer. His job was to find people who were unhappy with their own government and slowly convince them to work on his side, either by bribing or by blackmailing. Lee had done this himself, personally, for 8 years, with 8 of its close CIA associates inside China, which meant when he left the agency in 2007, he walked out carrying something far more dangerous than any classified document. After retirement, he started a tobacco business, which failed miserably and was about to make him bankrupt. That is when China spotted him. 2 men from the Ministry of State Security started observing Lee, and one day, they approached him. They didn't pressure or use any of the forceful tactics that MSS generally uses. MSS knew that a man like Jerry Lee didn't need to be threatened. He needed to be valued. So they put $100,000 in cash and made a promise that they would take care of him for the rest of his life. The next time the officers met, Lee came with a file that brought 30 CIA sources one step closer to death. Over the next 3 years, Chinese intelligence came back again and again. Each time they wanted to dig deeper into the same thing: how the CIA operated in China, how it communicated with sources without being detected, how assets were paid without leaving a trail, and meetings were arranged in cities where every camera was watching. Lee answered every question, because he had built parts of that system himself. And each time he answered, somewhere in China, a CIA source stopped picking its phone. But Lee alone wasn't the sole reason for the 30 agents missing. CIA also helped the MSS to find its agents. Somewhere in Langley, after the full picture had finally come together, the CIA had to sit down and answer a simple question. How do you rebuild a spy network inside a country that just dismantled your last one? The old playbook said you send a few new agents in, build new covers, and start over. But any officer sent into China would be as dangerous as sending them to Afghanistan was. Dozens of planned CIA postings to China were immediately cancelled. For the first time in decades, the agency that always had a trump card ran out of options. Until someone asked the question nobody had asked before. What if instead of sending agents in, we make the people come to us? Then the CIA worked on a project and built a dark web version of their own website, accessible only through a special browser called Tor. Tor makes you completely anonymous online. Nobody can see who you are or where you are browsing from. The reason they gave for launching was simple. Anyone who wants to help CIA and has something valuable to share can now reach them from anywhere in the world, without a fear of getting caught. Then, in May 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and CIA thought to test this system. They went straight onto their YouTube channel. On May 16, 2023, uploaded its first recruitment video, titled "Why I Contacted the CIA" in Russian language, telling anyone watching exactly how to contact them safely using Tor. Anyone with a phone and internet could now become a CIA informant. And it worked. Russia's invasion that was supposed to take days had still not succeeded years later. So then they expanded to Mandarin, Farsi, Korean, etc. In February 2026, Saya uploaded a video on YouTube titled as "The Reason for Stepping Forward to Save the Future." It was in Mandarin, aimed at one specific group of people: officers inside the Chinese military. The video opens on a man in uniform. He has spent his entire life serving his country, but the world around him is rotting. Colleagues he respects are being punished. Corrupt superiors are protecting each other. The system he gave everything to is not protecting China. It is protecting itself. The video ends with one line: "I cannot allow these madmen to shape my daughter's future world." Then the final frame appears. The fate of the world is in your hands. The video wasn't just pulling on emotions. It came with instructions. Buy a clean device with cache and use public Wi-Fi only. Download Tor, navigate to the CIA's dark web address. Submit your information. Delete everything and wait. It was released just weeks after China had purged some of its highest-ranking military generals, men who had spent decades rising through the same system that fictional officer was describing. The timing was not accidental. The video reached 60 million views.